Hey there folks, today I'm going to quickly go over 4 of my favorite Kokanee fishing reels. Now one of these is a relative newcomer, but I'm featuring it because I really feel like it was developed with Kokanee trollers in mind. And also, mind you, many of these reels also perform extremely well for trolling for walleye. Alright, so the first reel I'm going to start with today is the Shakespeare ATS 15 line counter reel. This is definitely my favorite budget reel that I'm going to feature in this video, and is also the largest and heaviest reel I'm going to feature. I feel like a lot of reels out there are just oversized for these Kokanee fisheries. They don't require really large drag systems or oversized spools, since we tend not to be fishing with much more than 100 to 150 foot of line out at any one time. Now this is definitely the budget friendly model. It retails for about $35 to $40 depending on where you get it. It comes only in right hand retrieve, so if you're a left hand retrieve guy, this might not be the reel for you. It has a pretty substantial line capacity with 10-pound monofilament. It can hold 350 yards. It weighs over 12 ounces, so it's a pretty hefty reel. Mostly polycarbonate plastic, although there is some stainless steel integrated into the line retrieve system and frame, as well as in the handle, but even the spool is plastic on these. So it has a line counter here at the top, and if I can take line out, I flip the bail here if I want to release the spool, and I can pull line out easily. And the line counter works fairly well. I haven't had any issues with it jamming. It does get water in there on those rainy days around the button, like many of them do. So that does become an issue in terms of visibility, because if you get some rain and then you get some sunshine, it sometimes makes it a little bit harder to read that. It does have a clicker system right here, although I almost never use clickers for Kokanee, just because it adds so much more to the drag system that it makes it kind of a pain to really dial in your drag sensitivity. Okay, it's got a star wheel drag system right here. It doesn't do any clicks or anything, so it's really much more challenging to dial in the sensitivity on the drag. You hear it's silent. Many of the other models nowadays have a star drag system with click, which kind of allows you to dial in that drag system a little bit better. You just retrieve as with any other one, and the line counter will spool back to its starting point. Now with each crank on this reel, of one full revolution of the spool brings in about 26 inches. That's because it has a 5.1 to 1 gear ratio, so I would say a moderate gear ratio, not extremely high, but yeah, it's a great little reel for a budget. I've had this one for about 5 or 6 years. I actually bought it the same time I bought an Akuma Convector 15D. Fished them in pretty much the same amount of time. The Convector, the line counter went out on it, which seems to be a problem with most of my Convectors. And this one is actually about $10 to $20 cheaper than the Convectors. It has a 1-year warranty, as almost every reel that I'm going to feature today does. So overall, the Shakespeare ATS 15 is a great budget buy. Like I said, you can probably find it for under $40 with a little bit of shopping around. It's a little bit oversized for Kokanee, but it does the job, and it will give you many years of service if you take care of it. Alright, so next up is the Tikka Samira 150 and 151 line counter reels. You can see they're fairly unique in that they have this vertical line counter system. And there's a lot that I like about the Tikka Samira, and I've been using this one for a long time. As you can tell, it's got a lot of scuff marks on it. I've really put this reel through the ringer. They retail for about $90. They come in a left and right hand retrieve. So the 150 is the right hand retrieve, the 151 is the left hand retrieve. It has 4 ball bearings, which is 2 more ball bearings than the Shakespeare that I just showed you. But there's a lot to like about this reel. It's very compact. So it weighs a little over 11 ounces, so it's a full ounce lighter than the Shakespeare I showed you before. It also has an entirely aluminum frame and spool system. So the outer covering is aluminum, the spool is aluminum, the frame is machined aluminum. This thing is built to last. It can really take a beating. You don't have to worry about dropping this thing. It's going to be able to handle a little bit of rough handling. So if you're not super nice to your gear, the Samira might be a good choice for you. There's some other features that I really like about this reel. Again, it's not as oversized as the Shakespeare I showed you, so a little bit reduced line capacity, but still holds over 200 yards of 10-pound monofilament. It has a 5.2 to 1 gear ratio, so very similar to the Shakespeare, and you're going to get about 22 inches of line with every crank on the reel. It has these really nice rubberized grips here. It has a star wheel drag system, and it has the click system, so you'll hear that little click every time I adjust the drag, which is really nice because then you can know approximately how many clicks back and forth in order to dial it in where you want it. Another thing that they've done better than anybody else on the market that I know of is they have the button here to reset the line counter. So if you depress the button here to release the spool and I take some line out, I found that the line counters do a really good job. They're fairly accurate. But what happens, like I said, with a lot of them is when it rains, it gets water in around the reset button. Well, the reset button on the Samira is got a little rubber gasket in there, so it's waterproof. So you'll never get water penetration into your line counter readout, which is really nice. You get about 22 inches of line retrieval per crank, so again, that's due to that generous 5-to-1 gear ratio. It does have a clicker. Like I said, I don't tend to use clickers all that much, but if you really want one, you have one there. Like all the reels, the Samira KL 150 line counter reels come with a 1-year warranty, and I doubt you'll need it because I've just had such good experiences with these reels. They do a really great job. The drag system is very smooth, and they're a great addition to your Kokanee setup, especially if you're looking for something very durable and compact. Okay, so next up on my reels is the Daiwa Alexa 100 line counter reels, and I have quickly fallen in love with these. They are very sexy looking, very compact, very lightweight reel, designed specifically with Kokanee and walleye fisheries in mind. So this is the Alexa LC 100H. If it's the 100HL, it's a left-hand retrieve like this one back here. So they're just mirror images of each other. These typically retail for about $125 to $130, so a little bit more expensive, but this is one of the lightest reels that I'm going to talk about today. It weighs only 8.6 ounces, so this one's just incredibly light. You barely notice it there. It's really perfect for these Kokanee fisheries where you tend to be running lighter rods, lighter gear, and so having those oversized reels on there really sort of takes away from the experience. But these, you really hardly notice them. They do this a couple ways. They've eliminated a lot of that aluminum frames and metal components. They still have the aluminum spool and some steel bars in here around the framework, but it's a predominantly polycarbonate plastic body. And so you can actually see, let's see, not on this one, but on my left-hand retrieve, you can see where it's taken some damage on the plastic paint there. So they are a little bit less durable than, say, the Samiras, which are full aluminum frames. But they still do a really good job and protect the reel. It holds about 130 yards of 10-pound monofilament, which is what most of us are running for Kokanee. The line counter is horizontal and mounted across the top here, and there's the button right there to reset it. It has a fairly high gear ratio of 6.4 to 1, so you get a full 26 inches with every full crank. So that's pretty impressive. You can get a fairly fast retrieve on there if you need to, if you're bringing your gear up from the deep. It has a star drag system also with the click, so that's very nice in terms of adjusting your drag sensitivity, and then it does have a clicker. It's a very loud clicker too, crazy loud. I hate clickers. But if you do like a clicker, that one's the perfect reel for you. It is not waterproof around the button here, so I have got water penetration in here on those rainy days, but it tends to dry out pretty fast. I don't know if that's because it's elevated up there, but it's an issue that I find to be very annoying, and I wish more companies would do something about having to deal with the water and the line counter issue. Like all the reels I featured today, this one has a 1-year manufacturer's warranty, but I've been fishing these for a little over a year, and definitely one of my more favorite Kokanee reels, just for the compact size, great drag system. They've handled those big Kokanee in Lake Roosevelt with no issue. Okay, up next is what I think might be my new favorite Kokanee reel. There's just so many features about this reel that are so smartly designed, and I'm really excited about this reel. As you can see, it's very compact, just like the Daiwa Alexa 100 line counters I just showed you. And this is the Abu Garcia Max DLC. So this is a digital line counter. It holds 135 yards of 10-pound monofilament, so more than enough. The battery goes right here on this side. There's a little release thing. It's super easy to replace, but it has all kinds of battery conservation features in there. The screen will go off after it's not in use for a while. But as you can see, it's a very small and compact line counter. In fact, it weighs exactly the same amount as the Daiwas at 8.6 ounces. And has a very similar gear ratio, 6.4 versus 6.3. And you get about 26 inches of line retrieve with each turn of the spool. Now, there's a lot of features in this reel that I want to cover that are going to set it apart from all of its competitors. It is actually less expensive than the Daiwa Alexa 100 line counter reels. It only retails for $105 versus that $125, $130. So it's about $20 cheaper, which is really nice. But it has a star drag system, just like all of my favorite Kokanee reels, and it has the clicker feature, which is good for adjusting that drag where you want it. Now obviously the line counter is much different. It's a digital line counter, okay? So when I hit the spool button and release and pull it out line, once I hit 1 foot, there you go, you can see it starts to count for you. To reset the line counter, you simply just hit this button real quick here. If you want to, let's say you're fishing out in low light situations, you can turn on a backlight, and now it's a little bit easier to see, which is really cool. That will only stay on for a short period of time, and then it shuts off for battery conservation. But now you can at least see how much line's coming off in low light situations. So you can see the light just turned off there. If you have your drag system set light enough that when a fish hits, it takes drag, what happens is when a fish hits and the drag system engages, the light comes on to give you a visual indicator of which rod is being hit. So instead of relying on a clicker, which it does have a clicker right down here on the bottom, this one will give you audio and visual indications of a strike. So that's really nice. I don't use clickers, but it would be nice to, if I'm fishing, to have that visual indicator, especially if you're running a bunch of different rods on there on your boat, then it'll make it really easy. Now another thing I wanted to show you is you can turn off the light by just holding that down for 3 seconds, and then it won't do that feature, right? So now when a fish hits, it just stays dark. So if you don't need that feature, you can just turn it off by having the light feature off. It's fairly simple and easy to do. Now I'm going to go ahead and take out a bunch of line here. I'm going to show you some other really cool features of this reel. So I'm going to get at least 20 foot of line out here. Okay, now watch what happens. I'm going to have to move my hand forward to grab the line. Watch what, or listen what happens here when I start to retrieve. So I'm at 19, 18, now listen. So when you get to 16 feet from the boat on the line counter, it gives you an auditory beep. This is sort of like, hey, if you got a buddy on the boat, this lets you know that your fish is getting close to the boat. Get your net ready, and you don't even have to be paying attention to the line counter. You can just be fighting and focusing on the fish. Then as you get closer, when you get to 6 feet, it gives you a double beep. And then as you get closer, it'll give you more beeps to make sure that you don't accidentally reel up any swivels or anything into the rod tip. So this is great if you're fishing with newbies and kids. Tell them, hey, if you hear that triple beep, make sure that you stop because you're getting too close to the reel. So what a very cool feature. When you load this reel up, when you spool it up, you actually program in the diameter of the line that you're putting on there. That way you're getting the most accurate representation of the amount of line out. So, I mean, a lot of these reels are designed to take, line anywhere from 8 to 20 pounds, which there's quite a difference in diameter there, so that affects the accuracy of your line counter. This has a computer chip in here that is calculating the amount of line out based on the diameter of your line. Okay, so just when you're thinking, man, there can't be any more cool features packed into this thing, this is the feature I am most excited about. All of that line counter technology is super cool, but this little switch right here is what I would call a flip and switch, but they call it anti-reverse technology. Okay, so basically what this does is now when I hold down the spool, I'm letting line go off the reel. I think we've all had this, especially when we're long lining in the spring. You'll get hit when you're dropping back, and then you have to take your hand and turn the reel to engage the drag system. Not anymore. If you have that turned on, you just release and instantly engages the spool and the drag system. So all you have to do when you're letting line out and you get bumped, let go. And you're automatically going to engage the drag system and you'll be fighting the fish. You don't have to turn the handle or do anything like that. You just one hand. So your other hand can be doing something else. Let's say you're paddling a kayak. If you're a paddle kayak angler, it's been really hard to deploy your gear because you have one hand that's trying to paddle, keep you going forward, and the other one on the reel, and then you have to set it down, use both hands to engage the drag system. Now you just let go. Or, if, like I said, if you're in a powerboat and you're long lining, you get hit on the drop, boom, just let go, automatically engages. So this just makes it more seamless, makes it easier. If you don't like that feature, you can turn it off. It's not a big deal. It's right there. Now I have to turn the handle to engage the drag system. So what a cool little reel for a pretty competitive price point. It's got 5 bearings, so it's just as good as all the other ones I showed you today. This is the Abu Garcia Max DLC. If you guys have any questions about these reels, just let me know. I'll put links to all of them in the description below. If you buy those reels to those description, then it really helps out this channel. But if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. I will get back to you. I'm looking forward to getting this out more. I've only had it out once, but I'm already loving it. But I definitely want to put it to test on some of those bigger Roosevelt kokanee. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Just remember, fish smarter, not harder.